Good afternoon and good evening, good morning to everyone. Welcome again to another Stranded live stream and webcast. I'm very excited and pleased to have a guest join us today. It so happened that a couple of months ago we had a video crew here they were filming kind of a commercial for the backend like ERP, which is like invoice, stock taking, etc. A system that we run as a backend to our shop. And he mentioned, well, I have a friend of mine who wrote a book about how to build a guitar. And I said, well, I've read one when I got started. And what's his name? And he said, Melvyn Hiscock. It's like, man, that's the book I read. That's how I got started. Building guitars. So that was quite a coincidence, and this gentleman John, he immediately introduced me to Melvyn. We've been communicating since, and I'm very pleased to have him stand by in the on a Skype call that we'll switch over to very soon. I just want to show a few pictures. I should have thought this through before. This beautiful young man getting ready to build his first instrument, and I want to point out in particular in this image here, there's a book right there, which is Melvyn's book, Build Your Own Electric Guitar, and it's right here on my table as well. He's working on a new edition, which will be out soon. It's the one on your screen right now. Googling this book, Make Your Own Electric Guitar, shows like 5 out of 5 reviews and 4.3, 4.2. So this is like the reference for getting started building guitars. There's a couple of the photos that I tried to show you before. And here's the end result, and a picture of the younger version of me playing the result. But without further ado, let's bring in Melvyn. How are you? And for your viewing pleasure, I'll wear headphones.
I find that I wear face phones. They're much better. It's better for everyone else. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I'm really excited to have you on the show. It's yeah, you're a big part of what defines me now, I guess.
That's very nice to hear, but also quite scary. You possibly have that much influence and power.
Yeah.
It's quite scary, but I'm glad. It has never stopped pleasing me to hear that people are still getting pleasure from the book.
Mm-hmm.
And this is 30 too many years, 36 years, I think.
Yeah.
84 we started writing. It's really funny. I always refer to we because I can't take responsibility for all of this myself.
It's the royal we.
Yeah. It's surreal we, really. It's really very strange.
Yeah.
But, it's led to all sorts of things, like people sending me 1954 Les Paul coffee cups, which is good. I'll just finish.
Yeah. But I grew up in a home where
that's where you went wrong.
I grew up in a home where my dad was building reel-to-reel tape recorders and stuff like that. So that was like going on as I was growing up. I learned to just tear stuff apart, put them back together again to figure out how they worked. And with very sparse resources, it was for me like if there was something I wanted and I couldn't afford, which I never could, I just made it. I would embroider my own Lacoste logos on t-shirts back when that was fashionable. So, but I played the guitar, and I read an article in Guitar Player magazine about Alan Holdsworth, and he had a guitar built out of this material called jelly tongue, which is almost like balsa wood.
Amazing.
And I had just turned a bowl in school wood shop out of jelly tongue, and it just something clicked, and it's like maybe I can build a guitar. And then I must have literally picked up your book in 1986. So basically, just as it got out, and yeah, the rest is history. I built 6 or 7 guitars back then, in the late 80s, early 90s, and then I didn't do it for many years, and then I got into it again, I suppose. But what happened? How did it happen that you wrote the book?
Well, it was actually really funny. It was one of those. It was a totally bizarre situation. But somebody came to me and he said, "How do I make a guitar?" And I said, "It's really easy. You go to the library and you get the book. It's that easy. Off you go." And he came back about a week later and he said, "There is no book." And, I said, "You're not looking hard enough. Go and have another look." Off you go. There you go. Off you go again. And he came back and he said, genuinely, he said, "I phoned the libraries." He said, "They phoned around. There is no book on the subject. I think you should write one." And I thought about it and I thought, that's a really stupid idea. And then I was sort of too stupid not to do it. And I started getting ideas. And there is a strange thing that happens when you write a book. And if you've ever done a thesis or a dissertation, it happens to you as well. It's when you suddenly find that you're holding the whole thing in your head. And somehow you have to get it out of your head. Because if you don't get it out of your head, you're going to go mad. And I was at a party one night where I suddenly realized that I could do this. I could do this because I could work out where to start from. I could work out the route that I needed to take through the book. I knew by the time I went home from that party which 3 guitars I would be making for the book and how I would then cross-reference, how I would separate out the chapters. And I came home from this party full of ideas and beer. Full of ideas. And that is what became the book. And what became the book is the fact that you have to start. You've got to go back a long way and start. And when you write the book, it's quite difficult because it's very difficult to do it without patronising the audience. To say, right, what we're going to do is we're going to take you back right to the bottom level of what we're going to talk about and then build it up from there. And, I mentioned to you the other day the thing that I did live, a demonstration I did when I had a kid. He was about 15. I hung a Telecaster around his neck, turned up to 11. Turned down, but the amplifier ready turned up to 11. And then I just told him, keep your hands out of the way and trust me. Never, ever, ever trust me. It's really not worth it. But he stood there very well and, his hands by his side with his guitar hanging there. And I said, right, what is the most important part of an electric guitar or a guitar? And people went, pickups, it's the wood, it's the combination of so-and-so, it's the way, it's the design. No. I'm going to show you what the most important part of the electric guitar is. I got a pair of wire cutters out of my pocket, turned the guitar up to 11, and then cut the strings off. and the noise it makes is fantastic. And then I said to him, right, play the guitar. And he said, well, I can't. I said, why not? He said, it hasn't got any strings on it. I said, well, there you go.
Yeah.
You something. But a guitar is a means of amplifying and altering the pitch of a string or a set of strings. That is what it does. And so start with the string. You also conveniently start with your first straight line. And you can, if you have a 6-string guitar, you can invent your 7th string that goes between the middle ones as your datum point. And you can then start talking about datum points, starting to design the initial things, your angles, your anchor points, without condescending, without patronizing the audience. You say, right, this is, I know it's obvious, but the string has to be anchored. It has to be tuned. So you've got to work out how to do that. You've got to work out how to anchor at the other end. You've got to work out if it's thick enough. You've got to work out how you're going to get to the neck. And then it's the other thing I've had a lot over the years is people say to me, is it difficult to make a guitar? Is it a big problem? And the answer is great. And when I deal with school groups and you're dealing with sort of 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, it's actually quite a good life analogy as well, to say to them, look, there's no such thing as a big problem. Everything in life is a series of smaller problems that you solve in turn. Sometimes you have to do it very, very quickly, but it's still just a series of smaller problems that you solve in turn until you get to the end. And that's basically what the book is. The book starts with very basic, this is a guitar string. How long do you want it? How many frets do you want? What thickness is it going to be? Are you going to make a bass? Are you going to make an 8-string bass? Are you going to make a 7-string? What are you going to make? What are you going to make? Decide, and then work from there. So that's how. And it just happened that it worked. People liked it.
Yeah.
I had a way of writing that was inclusive, that was conversational, which I didn't know how. I'd never written anything. I'd avoided, at school. I came out of school with virtually no qualifications.
Oops.
The wonderful. This is gaffer tape doesn't always do everything. God. And I'll still keep going because I'm a professional,
But I just wanted to say that I think what you just mentioned that's what I realized too. With to me, a guitar was like some mythical creature or some voodoo that like went into it, which is what made it a guitar and what made it generate these noises and sounds. And but reading your book and thinking about it some more, it's like it's a series of small physics problems, really.
Yes.
And if you have some kind of engineering mindset, you can break it into these small construction problems, and then ultimately it will become a guitar.
Oh, absolutely! I totally agree with you, and that is just the way of doing it, and it's piece by piece. It's just you start at the beginning, you work through, and if you have a problem, you either bypass and ignore it, or you find a solution for it. But then again, of course, the other thing is I then had to learn how to do it, and I started with the best thing you can ever have if you want to learn a lot about a subject quickly is an incredibly large amount of stupidity. Because if you start off really stupid and you make a lot of mistakes, then you've got to get round those quickly too. And you've got to learn how to keep your playing sharp. You've got to learn how to keep your fingers out of the way. You've got to learn what's going to happen. You've got to learn how the correct and creative use of gaffer tape in holding iPads when doing interviews with Swedish guitar makers. You have to learn all of these things.
Yeah.
So,
Edward here is commenting. It's amazing Melvyn still has all his fingers. So.
well, I almost don't, but I've always been. The only thing I'm superstitious about in life is these 10. And, I have a friend. In fact, in this new edition of the book, we've increased the safety chapter, and I include a photograph of a friend of mine's hand that went through a spindle molder, and warning of what can happen when it goes wrong. And he very kindly allowed me to use the photograph, and he basically cut himself off there. And he still plays bass, and he plays with his arm like this. It's very funny to watch, but great guy. But it was just one of those accidents. But it was just always being very careful. So you always have to remember. Again, we joked the other day. It's how quickly you learn that the shiny end of the soldering iron is not the one you pick up.
But I mean, you're an authority on the subject of building guitars now, with hundreds of thousands of copies sold. But when you started, I mean, what were your credentials back then? You kind of said you had no idea and you had to figure out how to do it. But surely you had something coming into this.
I had a secret weapon. A very good friend of mine of 40 years. A man who I think is one of the best guitar makers I've ever seen. And I got very lucky and worked with Roger Giffin, who has been a very good friend for a long time. He's also not entirely a grown-up, which means that we get on very, very well indeed.
I'm showing a picture of the two of you, I think.
Is this the one in the workshop in 84?
Yeah, where you're kind of goofing off. It looks like an 84-ish.
Yeah, there's the black and white one with us. That was taken when I was using the bench that we're sitting on. There is the one that he still uses in Oregon. And then of course the next one was 95. We met up with him when he was working for the Gibson Custom Shop, and then we went to see him in November last year or year before, and he's still got that workshop bench there. So we now have a photograph of that bench on the wall here. It's a big part of my life I spent on there in all-night session. And Roger was the most generous and friendly person I could have come across, who has always been absolutely open with information and advice and never pushed down the throat. I don't think we've ever had a crossword. And that really made the difference. So I learned very quickly from the time that I started in about 1975 to when the book came out in 1986. I'd learned a lot, and most of that was from Roger. And then, of course, writing the first edition, I had to pretend that I'd never made a mistake in my life because nobody had ever heard of me. So I had to pretend that, of course, I knew everything. I'm Mr. Guitar Maker. I know everything. And then, of course, when we came to do the second edition, which was 12 years later, when I took the whole project over and became NBS Publications, which you know what it stands for. Not everyone else does. And it was more fun to write that because I could say, this is really stupid, but I've done it. It's easy to make stupid mistakes. Some of them are just so easy to make. The classic is again, when we were chatting yesterday, is if you have 6 inches from your first to your last machine head, what is the difference? What is the measurement you need between the machine heads? Well, obviously, it's an inch, isn't it? That gives you 7 holes. And, the thing is, hands up, everybody that has been stupid enough to make that mistake.
Yeah.
You know, and so and I think it's interesting that in doing the book, for me now with 40 years experience and 115,000 books out there, I found out through you and how many guitars there are. Parker started out of my book. There's a guy in Australia, I've forgotten his name, my brain goes, but he's given me a really lovely quote for the back of the new book, and it says 17 years, 4,000 guitars, 9 staff. Thank you, Melvyn.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of I'm responsible. I do joke I'm probably responsible for more bad guitars than anyone else. But there's also Saul Cole, Dennis Fano. Dennis Fano started out of the book. Over here we've got Damien Probert. He started out of the book. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of names that you would recognise that started out of it. And I heard that Sir has a copy on the shelf. I don't know if he started from it, but there's a copy there. Mm-hmm. And it's quite fun. I sent you the photograph yesterday, the first time I saw it in the United States at the Philly Guitar Show, where it was on the J.K. Lutherie stand, and it was next to Bob Benedetto's book. Mm-hmm. I thought, yeah, find you there, yeah.
Yeah.
So no, it's been a pretty interesting 30-something years.
Yeah. I guess still recognized as the go-to book to get started.
Yes, and again, that's what we're trying to do now with the new one. Now, we were doing on Sunday. We were doing the video for the web page, and one of the questions you can ask is, there is so much information now on the internet. Why buy a book? Well, the answer is, it's really quite simple to put stuff on the internet. I could go onto the internet tonight and claim to be able to show you how to be a heart surgeon, because you don't know that I have no experience whatsoever as a heart surgeon. Now, I've seen stuff on guitar making videos online that has made me think, I like that guy, he's good, he's clever. And then 2 minutes later he does something which is absolutely stupid. And I've seen other people talking about guitars, and you look at it and you think, how did you evolve to have anything other than gills? And you look at these things, and they're awful. And the thing, of course, with a book, it costs you nothing to put something up on the internet. However, it costs me a lot of money, fully 5 figures, to get a book out and on the street. 40 years of experience into the book in a way that's understood. I've got to be sure and confident that what is in that book is correct before I send it out. And the other thing is, you don't take your iPad into the workshop because it's covered in dust. You can take your book. It doesn't really matter if you have an idea and scribble on a page on the book, but you don't scratch it on the screen of your iPad. So I still think there is a place for a book that says, right, here we go, here's the start, here's the way we go through, and it refers to all sorts of things. It refers to CNC machining, of course, which is a different world altogether, but you still know how to put a guitar together. You should, I think personally, if you're planning to make your first guitar on a CNC machine, you're being a little bit foolish. You should actually make one by hand first, because you should understand how it all fits together and physically understand all that before you try and do it on a computer. Because the computer's not necessarily going to answer your questions. It may be asking you questions that you haven't noticed, and you're going to find out when you come to make the guitar. So there's a lot of new stuff. There was 75,000 new words went into the new book, which was fun because they were written in 2 weeks. I just decided to sit down. February the 10th, 2016, it was the day David Bowie died. I don't know what it was about hearing the news that David Bowie had died, or whether I, secretly knew there was something wrong with me or something. But I decided that I needed to do the new edition. So I sat down, and in the first, I wrote 50,000 words because it just flowed out. All the new stuff flowed out, and we had the whole thing integrated with the old TypeScript in 17 days.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And then it slowed up a bit because I started going to see doctors, which took a bit of time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I guess you're working towards an unknown health deadline at the moment.
Yeah. Well, very much. I mean, very much so now. It's, there's been times when we've been ready to do something and, just my health hasn't been good enough. So for those that don't know, I started with colon cancer, which moved to the liver, has now spread around the rest of the body. And I might have a year, I might have 5 years, I don't know. But we're going to get the book out. And, if nothing else, it will give an income to my wife of 2 or 3 cents a year. And then it's still out there, which will be nice. But the other thing is I'm stubborn. I started it when I was fit. I'm not going to let the fact that I'm not. And look at me. Clearly I look like I look really ill. I'm fit enough to do it at the moment. I have to be careful. I have to pace myself, but we are getting there. And we're not far off printing now. We have to get the distribution. American distribution is all sorted. We have to get the UK distribution and warehousing sorted. Where we're going to print it, work out the margins, work out the retail price, and we're there. Mm-hmm. So it's good.
But in terms of self-publishing a book, had you done that before when you did the first one, or did you have to figure out like the aspects of book publishing as well?
It goes back to the thing that I said at the very beginning, that I was too stupid not to. And because I'd written the first book, I discovered I could write. So then I got the jobs that required more writing, which then required more publishing, desktop publishing ability. And I ended up working in publishing. And I was working for Macmillan, the publishers in very big publishers, and was involved actually in being the first people to do digital publishing at Macmillan. And in fact, there was the other guy that was doing it was a guy called Tony Hooper, who was one of the original Strawbs, the folk band, the Strawberry Hill, when he was playing on Eel Pie Island when he was 15 in about 1950 or something. And he and I were doing that. And I was not getting on. I mean, the old publisher were not interested in doing a second edition. I could see the book was being overtaken. I'd heard that, for example, Seymour Duncan was thinking of writing one. I thought, I'm not having this. And so I wrote the new one. I sat down and just wrote the new one. And there was a bunch of coincidences that happened. For example, I got the letter giving me the rights back was sent to me on Jimi Hendrix's birthday, so, November. And you think, well, it's an omen. It's an omen. All of the photographs had disappeared. The guy that had taken them had all the negatives, and I had no contact with him for 10 years. And I knew roughly where his wife worked, but of course, through data protection, I couldn't get hold of her. And then we went to a guitar show in at Wembley Stadium, the Wembley Arena or Conference Centre, and it was the first time I'd sort of put my head above the parapet for a long time. And I had people walking up and going, "Hi, I haven't seen you. What are you doing? When's the new book coming?" It was the first time Stuart MacDonald had exhibited in the UK, and I said, look, I've got this idea. I'm thinking of doing a second edition, and they just went, "Shut up and do it,"
Yeah.
which was great, you know.
Yeah.
And they were saying 800 copies a year, which is enough to keep going. Excuse me. And so we sat in the car and said, "We've got a horrible feeling we're going to have to do this, but I've got no photographs. All the old negatives have disappeared because it's old technology. You know, the first book was written on a typewriter. You know, it was a long time ago. All of the first fret calculations were done on a pocket calculator. Each one done individually and then cross-checked again. Of course, now you just do it on a spreadsheet. It's really easy. But so it was very different. And I got home and I OCR software. I just scanned the old book. And I was sitting. It was a Sunday morning. I had a hangover because things happen. And I sat there looking at the book, just thinking, well, I've got to change that. That needs to come out and move. That needs to change. And the phone rang. And I said, "Hi, who is it?" He said, "It's Peter." Peter who? He said, "Well, Peter Haskell." And Peter Haskell had all of the negatives for the book. I hadn't spoken to him for 10 years, and he phoned me that day. And I went downstairs to see my partner, and she said, "You look like you've just seen a ghost." I said, "Well, in a way I have." I said, "But we don't now have a choice. I mean, the synchronicity of all of this is such that we can't say no. We have to do this." And so I became NBS Publications. I had a lot of help from the people that I was working with. I was already used to doing page setting, working with, in those days, PageMaker and Quark, the old software. So the actual physical publishing side of things was not a problem. And I was working for a publisher. And in the end, I had to walk into the office and say, "Look, we have a conflict of interest. Now, I understand that you have every right to tell me to go and clear my desk and leave the building immediately. It's your call. I have no negotiating power here at all because I'm the one that's doing this, but I'm going to do it. Whichever way it happens, this is what I'm doing." And they said, "Okay, as long as it doesn't interfere with what you do here, we're happy." And then they set up my UK and US distribution for me, which was fantastic. And were a great help. And also, as a result, I ended up introducing digital publishing into them as well. It was an interesting time to be involved, and I became a publisher for however many years. Made the occasional guitar. Discovered softwood. I love making Western red cedar bodies. I love them. And using Douglas fir for necks, for example. If you get it really close, straight grained, because it's not about whether or not it's a hardwood or a softwood. It's stiffness to weight ratio, and it's very stiff. So using that and just doing things a bit differently, and having some fun with guitars, and just making a lot of guitars with P90s because I love them.
Yeah. But have you always followed your own advice in building guitars? Have you realized that what I wrote back then was no good?
Why should I listen to an idiot like me?
I know. You have to eat your own dog food.
No. The thing is, you do learn. You learn. I remember. You see, I'm old enough to remember the mid-70s when everything had to be really heavy. Do you remember things like the Yamaha SG2000, where if you wanted to put it on the stand, you needed to use the crane. The things were weighing about sort of 15 kilos. They had small planets orbiting them. They had so much weight. They had their own universes around them, and then that changed, and people started realizing the thing that a lot of people who'd been in the know about old Gibsons, about, you know, the lightweight and resonance, because I've got, you know, I've got theories about it that, you know, what happens, of course, is that the theory that Les Paul had, that if you have something that is infinitely hard, then you get maximum sustain. Yeah, fine, but you don't necessarily get a good tone from the string, because when you attach that string to something that is in any way elastic, so you know, if you put your hand on the back of the neck and you feel your vibration, it means that there is some of the energy of the string being lost into the material. But of course, what's happening is it's not happening evenly across the spectrum, the audio spectrum. Yep. So it is actually taking out different frequencies. So it's not taking out all of the frequencies equally. So for example, I love Douglas fir bodies because they just happen to ring really nicely, and they're a pig to work on, because you can't knock them while you're working, and they knock very easily once you're finished. But if you put a bit of, you know, very thin, even just a 1 millimeter maple veneer, which makes no difference to the sound, on the top and the back, it protects it a lot. They make great guitars. And I've got a guitar here, which is somewhere, which is Douglas fir neck and cedar body. It's 10 years old. The neck is absolutely dead straight. The only hardwood on the guitar is the ebony fingerboard. And it's great. It's just fun to play around, and fun to be different, and fun to do things that, you know, they tell me that I shouldn't do. Well, who are they? Who are these people? And just to sort of disprove some of those things. And, you know, it's things like, you know, mahogany sounds dark. Well, define dark. It also, you buy two pieces of wood from next to each other from the same tree, they're not going to sound the same. They're going to have a slightly different frequency response, and it's the way that piece of wood absorbs the energy that goes into it that affects the way the string vibrates, in my view. That's not a scientist's view, and you may disagree. In fact, it's quite useful that you're in Sweden, because if we do disagree, we can't have a punch-up.
No, but the thing is, too, regardless of what comes through the speaker, I mean, there's electric guitars have such an imperfect signal chain. I mean, there's a string vibrating, being picked up by a 1950s type technology magnetic thing with the bobbin, and then through pedal board into an amp with the lousiest type of speaker ever made, etc., etc. And then it's a PA system blasting out. So ignore what people can actually hear. You, the musician, will have an interaction with the instrument. It'll vibrate in your hands against your body.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what's heard through the speaker, but that will influence how the player plays. And the audience will hear that.
It's a combination of so many things. Somebody once said to me, what affects the sustain on a guitar? And I think I came up with 17 things straight away. One of the things, I mean, I have a thing about nut frets. I hate nut frets. You may love them. I hate them. Because everyone says it makes the open string sound the same as a fretted string. Well, it doesn't. Because when you fret a string, you take several ounces of fatty substance and you shove it up against the string to absorb the energy. So your string is absorbing energy, and then you plug it into an overdrive and a Marshall, and you tell somebody you can tell the difference between that and an open string that's going over. And I don't. Some people may. You know, there's a lot of people saying things, and you think, yeah, don't think so. Possibly. You know, I think there are people with good ears, definitely, who can hear things and hear the difference. And there are differences. I mean, I love I love a P90 through an AC30.
Mm.
That's just a sound I love. And again, saying earlier, my car registration is P90 Melv. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the reason I did that was because I can, uh, which is always a good one. Yeah, it's there's a lot of things about it. You've got so many different ways of doing it, and there are times when you come across something, you start a guitar, and you think this is going to be great, and everything goes together fine. You have a nice ringy piece of wood, it feels good. Then you string it up, and it sounds like it's potatoes, strung like, and you can never quite pre-guess it
Yeah.
to level. And that's one of the fun things. I mean, you can use science to a degree, but again, some people use it differently. I saw a great thing on TV in the late 70s. Somebody was talking about defining the vibration characteristics of classical guitar tops by exciting them at the bridge and measuring the vibration patterns under X-ray.
Mm.
Well, that's fine, and it all looked very fine. It all looked very, very, very clever, except the tops were not attached to the sides. So therefore, the rigidity around the sides was not there. Therefore, the vibration of the top was completely different. Secondly, there were no string on it, and that string compresses the top of the guitar in front of the bridge and tensions it behind the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't taken that into consideration either. And I wasn't very old when I saw this. I think I was only about sort of 22, 23. And I just looked at it and I thought, that's bad science.
Yeah.
But there's I still hear people saying the wood you make a guitar from has no effect on the final guitar. Of course it does.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's down to the silkiness of what it feels like to play.
Yeah.
Alter the way you play it.
Yeah.
So there's
Completely.
a lot of, yeah. So it's been interesting. I mean, there's I have some fun guitars. My other favourite guitar is Western Red Cedar and old Honduras mahogany neck, which I had lying around, and with an ebony board, and it's just a double cut, like a double cut Les Paul Jr. with tapped P90s, and I love P90s. But if you tap them off at about 7,000 turns, and then take them up to 11 on the back and 10 on the front, you have a guitar that sounds like it sounds like you've turned it down to 7 on the volume knob, but without losing the tone that you would get through doing it through a pop. So you just get that extra bit of jangle and that less overdriven sound just by tapping the pickup, which is great fun. That's just one of the things I've learned recently while I was making pickups in my short pickup making career.
Yeah. But did you ever also have a musician career? Did you perform live with your works?
Yeah, no, a few times. For example, John's wedding. You mentioned John earlier. Our band played at his wedding, and John got up and sang. And he's actually a very good singer. Well, he sang well enough that Claire, his wife, didn't hide. So that's always a good sign. No, I never played as much as I should. When I was at school, nobody in my year played guitar, so I had no one to play with because you were very strictly set on years. And then I started building, and when I started building, people assumed Did you get this? When you start building, people assume that you don't play.
No, I think the opposite is true. They assume I play way more than I do.
I was completely different. They just assumed I didn't play.
Oh, really?
So,
yeah.
So no, but I played various things. I have one album credit. My very good friend Nick Magnus, who drew the cartoons in the book many years ago, he did an album called Hexameron, and I played 6 notes of slide guitar. No,
but I had. I mean, I've I approached it from the engineering perspective, and
Yeah.
like we said before, just breaking down physics problem. And I've learned through interacting with a lot of very experienced musicians throughout. I can build a guitar that has this shape and these features, and then
Yeah.
people started queuing up and saying, well, build me one. And most of these had a lot of experience playing, and they would tell me,
Yeah.
I would like these materials because I associate them with these and these properties.
Yeah.
So I would do what they told me, and I would add my own just physical and mechanical aspects to it, but I would play the result. And
Yeah.
I mean, that learning experience was just invaluable. I got hundreds of years of experience just hearing people tell me what they expected, trying to like verify that and correlate that with just an engineering mindset.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time I can get by without having all this like my own stage experience, but a lot of the time I just have to ask people, and I guess my skill is understanding what they say, or
Yes.
not adding my own filters on what people say, but objectively understanding and listening to what people say, and try to distill that into something that people like.
Very important. I think what you're saying is very important, because there are a lot of people out there making guitars that don't play at all.
Mm.
And I wonder how they can understand what is required from a customer if the customer is trying to explain to them, as customers do in twang talk. I want it to sound a bit, in the mids and the twangs and I want it to get to raunch a bit, and it's got a widdly wee, and you
Yeah.
well, what does all this mean?
Yeah, it's its own language.
Exactly. You and I, where we come from a different basis, that we've got a little bit more experience, we can go, well, obviously what you want is you need this. You need a certain type of pickup. You need a certain type of response from that guitar. You need a certain type of, feel to it. You need to, if you just want to go in a band and play E, A, and B, you can make do with a nice, great, big, thick neck, which is going to, give you a little bit more extra sustain because you're a little bit more body in the wood. You don't need to take away material. You've got support for the string. But equally, if you want to be up at the top, being, the next Steve Vai, then you need it slightly differently. So it's that experience, as you say, exactly, that is really useful.
Yeah.
Whereas I tell everybody to use AC30s and P90s.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, though. I mean, not having had a career behind me performing live and evaluating all kinds of gear, I don't have the knowledge about gear. So, I mean, I end up in countless conversations with people who just throw like amp models and pedal models and pickups, and I have no idea. So
there is a lot of I don't know if you have the phrase in Sweden, anorak. In the UK, we have the phrase an anorak, who is somebody that usually speaks a bit like that and is expert on the subject, and they usually wear an anorak with a hood. And then, did you know you're doing that wrong because it's and you get a lot of that anorak sort of thing about it as well. But people do love gadgets, but it's really funny when you go back to some things. For example, the solo in Another Brick in the Wall, which one thinks that David Gilmour played on his black Strat, was actually played on a 1955 gold top Les Paul. So P90s, you see, the intro to Smoke on the Water, which everybody plays wrong, because it's actually pull-ups. It's not downstrokes at all. It's pull-ups, and that was done again on a P90. I think it was a Les Paul Junior, And you find out a lot of not necessarily everything was done the way that you were led to believe. It's like Jeff Beck. I love Jeff Beck. A lot of it's done through a pig nose or a modelling amp in the studio. And he's still the best controller of an electric guitar I've ever seen in my life. The control he gets is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But he very uses some gear which you think, well, but he just makes it work.
Yeah.
So
I just want to open up to the viewers. If they have any questions, start posting them now. We have 10 more minutes.
Okay, I'm going to myself a little bit more. This is all relying on gaffer tape.
You should have done this adjustment 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago.
We did it at about 12 o'clock. That's better. Yeah. I can sit back. I'm reveling in how handsome I look.
Now, I was going to say, a good while earlier, you mentioned Stuart McDonald, and for me, when I started out, so that was literally 1986-ish. There wasn't now there's the internet, so anything is just at your fingertips, whatever you want. But for me, discovering the existence of Stuart McDonald, and even Sweden 1986, I'm not going to say it was a developing country at all, but we're quite evolved. But being such a small nation, there's no access to stuff.
No.
So and Stuart McDonald, they would deliver, they would ship with UPS. So like 2 days after ordering, I would have something that I could pick up at the post office, and that was just mind blowing.
Yeah.
And I actually ordered your book, I think, as far as my memory, I can recall. I think I ordered it from Stuart McDonald.
I think you did, because I would remember you if you'd ordered it from me directly.
Yeah.
Because I think I sent 6 copies direct to Sweden. And everyone was listening, so I would have probably remembered.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about StewMac is StewMac, there's an awful lot of tools that you have with StewMac. Now, a lot of people forget that when I started out, which was 40 years ago, those tools didn't exist.
Yeah.
But we still make guitars. You can make a guitar without a router. You can make a guitar without an oscillating bobbin sander. You can make a guitar without, something that, bends your fret wire for you. There are ways of doing these jobs that we had to find out. There used to be a time there was no such thing as a nut file. You couldn't find nut files. You used to make nut files by serrating the edge of feeler gauges.
Yeah.
And then
that was gonna be my follow up. So this was a lead into. What do you think for the amateur builders getting started that are watching? What do you think is like? What's the minimum advice to get started? What's the minimum tools you need to get going?
Right. There is an old phrase that says I'm sure you have again in Sweden, a bad workman always blames his tools. Well, that is rubbish, because if you don't have the right tool for the job, you cannot do the job. Now, what you need to do, the first thing you need to do when you're starting out is you're going to need a plane, you're going to need to make things flat, but you're going to need to learn how to sharpen it and keep it in good condition. When you're starting out, it's not the amount of tools that you have that is the most important thing. It's how well you look after them, how sharp you keep them, how cleverly you keep the soft bits out of the way. Because if you've got the red stuff coming out, it's painful. It's wrong. Incidentally, as an aside, in the first book, because I'd said, you do not cut yourself, if I did cut myself, I had to stop working and taking photographs until it healed. the second book I got lucky. The third book, there is a photograph of my hand, and I do have a plaster on it, but that's because of chemotherapy hurting my fingernails. So I use that as an excuse. But the most important things are, you need a good chisel. You need a router is your first power tool, but learn how to use it. Go through absolutely every video on the internet and go through the basics, and remember safety. Never change the bit while it's still plugged in. Because when something goes wing and you're working on it, 30,000 RPM into your hand doesn't hurt immediately because the shock level is too high. It hurts like hell afterwards. I've not done it, but I know people who have. And my friend Chris, who talks about losing his fingers, said he lost his fingers on a spindle molder. Didn't hurt because the shock and the adrenaline was so high that it cut it off completely. He said, but then when he got to hospital, he said, then it changed a bit. He was in agony for a long time. But no, I think you can start. You need a plane. You need to learn how to work to a line. You must learn how to. And one thing I see a lot on the internet is, how do I work out where my pickup positions are? You go, well, draw it. Get a big piece of paper and draw it. And this is one of the things that I've done with the book, is the book starts from a purely pen and pencil and piece of paper point of view. Start with a straight line drawn on a piece of paper and build from that. And you will learn more doing it that way, because you will learn that you need to move. If you want to get volume control right next to your bridge, you've got to remember you've got to get your little finger out there as well. So you need to leave a little bit of space, and that'll all come, and it'll all come, and it will fall into place visually. But I think get what tools you can afford. Get good quality if you can, and learn how to keep them in good condition, and don't just throw them around. Anybody who opens a can of paint with a chisel, in my view, should be hung. A chisel has a thing. There are other tools as well. I mean, thinking of one great thing is using a marking knife to mark your lines, because if you're working on a dark wood with a pencil or a pen, especially if you're like me and you wear these things, then sometimes you just quite can't see it. So you just get on there at good straight edge. It's the most important thing. So at least long enough. You don't want a 12-inch. You want a good meter straight edge, because you're going to need that to check a lot of. You don't need one that has indents for the frets, actually.
No.
Sometimes it's just as easy to rest it on the top of the frets and see where the problem is. So there are. I won't say which company, but there is at least one company that produces a lot of tools you don't need. There's a lot of things out there that people are going. For example, radiusing a fingerboard with a block that long. I use a straight sanding stick, and I actually put the curve on crossways and lengthways with one sanding stick. And I've got a fun thing in the book about the fact that people were making compound radius fingerboards before they ever knew they were doing it.
I know, it's inevitable with the sanding stick approach.
It is, yeah. Because if your fingerboard blank is full depth and you taper it, and you then make the edges the same depth all the way along, then the radius at the nut end is greater than the radius at the other end. That is inevitable. And people were doing it for years without realizing. So I thought that was quite fun. So I put that. But no, there's the other thing is just try and avoid the BS. There's a lot of that. That's the name of my company. Yeah, there's a lot of information that people will tell you. There are a few people that talk about, you know, just you know that a Fender neck will never sustain because it's screwed in. Really? You want to play some of the Strats I've played? I've been very lucky, and I've played some guitars that would actually make your leg fall off. They are so good. I've been very lucky. I was influenced by the Flying V. I've never got to play Andy Powell's Flying V, although I know him now. And he started out actually on a guitar he made himself at school in Wishbone Ash, and then bought the Flying V. And of course, the other Flying V that I had was I had a picture of Jimmy playing the Flying V at the Isle of Wight, and I finally got my hands on that guitar. And they said to me, "Do you want to plug it in?" Now I can't even hold a guitar left-handed, let alone play it. And it was like somebody dangling a carrot in front of a donkey, saying, "I can't have it." So I got it's an interesting guitar. It has the 1966 very narrow neck shape on it, and as you know, Jimmy had huge hands. He had very, very big hands. So how he played that guitar is a mystery, because it's a narrower than standard nut. I think it's 5/16 or but it's been an interesting. When did I start? 1975. 45 years.
Yeah.
I can't be 45 years because I'm only 29.
No. Yeah, but there are a lot of truths out there that are in fact myths, and I think for someone starting out building their own guitar, there are far more fundamental things to worry about than bolt-on necks or not.
If you make a guitar at a reasonable, first, one good thing to do to start with is to make one to throw away. Make one out of if you can make a guitar that holds together out of standard pine that's soft, then you make it out of something that is harder, it will be easier. So if you can make something basic, if you can make a neck out of pine that is okay, and you can make a body out of pine that is okay, you're going to be okay making a proper guitar. And as long as what you do holds together, stays together, is rigid when you put it together, and most importantly, the other thing that people get wrong is the angles, the engineering side that you talk about. The angles must be right.
Yeah.
And not only that way, which is one of the most important ones. So to stop you, having to drill a bridge right into the body, but also that way, you've got to make sure that you can work to that center line. So there's an engineering aspect to it as well. But that's what I said was the most important thing, is learning how to do those basics. But if you can do that, I would say to everybody, start on something simple like a Les Paul Junior, which has a very easy neck join. It's a full width tenon on the Junior, the single cut Junior. It has a single pickup. You haven't got to drill very far through the body. It's a block of wood body. It's a relatively simple neck. It's a relatively simple. You can choose what truss rod you use. You can put a bit of carbon fiber down there if you want, but it's going to give you a basis to learn from. And pretty well everyone that makes a guitar makes a second one. Yeah. So don't worry too much if your first one is a little bit not the exact guitar you wanted. And the other thing I always tell people is, don't try and put everything you've ever wanted into one guitar, because what you make is an absolute dog.
Yeah. But I was just going to say about your angle comment. It's so important to I think to sketch things out. So pencil and paper, full scale drawings from every angle is like the most important tools.
Elevation is I think side elevation is probably more important than plan.
Yeah. Because I started with like when I when I started this project that now became Strandberg, I started with cardboard prototypes. First, just sketches, and then cardboard to like verify shapes and stuff. And then I actually made a full-scale guitar out of styrofoam, which I could just sand into something that resembled a guitar in a short period of time.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, figuring those things out with tangible specimens is just invaluable.
Yes, and I honestly say to everybody, draw it, not on a computer.
Yeah.
Draw it, big piece of paper, full size. Incidentally, did you know a lot of the early Fender prototypes, the early Stratocaster prototypes were pine, and it was because it was dirt cheap and it was easy to work. Yeah. We went to the Songbirds Museum last year in Chattanooga, which was great fun, and they have a couple of very, very early pre-serial numbered, very, very, first 5 or 6 Stratocasters, and they were made from pine because it was cheap and easy to do. So it's good enough for Fender. It's enough, make it out of, well, I would say Douglas fir or red cedar for a body if you want to try starting, because it's cheap. If you look carefully, you can find nice close-grained wood. If you go to the wood yard and say, "Excuse me, can I have a look?" they're usually fairly good. You can sometimes find it quarter sawn. I have pieces of quarter sawn Douglas fir, which are great. I mean, you can use that for a neck. You'll learn a lot, and then go on and make one with a multi laminated neck with different colours. But don't try and run before you can walk. Don't try and walk before you can crawl. So it's all, I think we agree on a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I learned from you. How could we not?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I learned from Roger. It's always great to see him. He's a great guy. I do remember one day, we are both huge fans of Don Martin, who was cartoonist for Mad Magazine. And I do remember one day where the pair of us were actually having to hold ourselves up on our elbows, leaning on the desk, because we'd laughed so much our legs had gone. I've had some great fun times with him. It's been really. I mean, he has been so generous over 40 years that I owe it to him. A lot of people say they owe me a lot for the book, but there's a lot of Roger in that book. So he gets credit every time. No, it's great. So the new one is hopefully getting. In fact, we counted this up this morning with about 115,000 words, with about 40,000 words of captions, because I like to explain what's happening in the photograph in the caption. Because I don't say this is a neck. You say this is the neck. You can see it from this angle. If you notice, you will see that the nut is already marked. It's useful information. About 600 photographs, over 150 diagrams, and 7 pages of fret calculation. And another guarantee that you can't always recommend. In fact, if I get my wonderful wife Caroline, she'll probably hold that for a bit.
Yeah.
She's very good.
It's probably our cue to start wrapping up.
Yeah, it's been really, really good. I mean, I'd love to get out there and come and see what you're doing. But it costs me more than the flight costs to insure myself because of this. Well, and also there's COVID as well at the moment. But as COVID goes, I've still got the problem of fitting it in between chemotherapies and things like that, and it's not fun. And the other thing is, I do nag, and please excuse me for using you and this system. Never, for everybody, never miss a test. I missed a test, and that's why I'm in this situation. So it's especially when you get to my age, I'm 62. Make sure that you keep your health going, because it's quite important, your health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I find it quite useful.
Yeah, it's a good thing to have.
Yeah, it's a good thing to have.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's been brilliant. I have to get over sometime and see it. It'd be really good.
You'd be more
Keep
than
doing what
welcome.
you're
Yeah.
doing. And anytime, get in touch anytime. You're welcome. It's been great fun to do. I've really enjoyed it.
Agreed. I've enjoyed it very much, and you've been very generous with your time as well. I really hope
You haven't seen the invoice yet.
I hope you have many
It's been
productive years.
Absolute, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to do. It's been nice to just chill out and talk guitars for an hour, and it's been great fun. And fight with gaffer tape, which is always good fun.
I hope you have many productive years ahead of you, and look forward to hearing from you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sure we will.
You bet. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.